Welcome to the deep dive. There's just so much information swirling around these days, it's hard to keep up, right?
Mhm.
Our whole goal here is to kind of cut through all that noise. We want to bring you those aha moments, those insights, without you feeling totally buried. So today we're taking a deep dive into the world of guitar effects, specifically one pedal that really made its mark, the TC Electronic Corona Chorus. It's a great story, actually, a modern classic that managed to blend some really new tech with a nod to, well, a pretty legendary past.
Exactly. And our mission today is basically to unpack the whole story of the Corona Chorus. Where did it come from? What was the tech behind it? Its features, how it did in the market, and importantly, the impact it's had and still has on musicians. We really want to dig into why this pedal, even though it's not made anymore, is still something guitarists are actively looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we go, keep an ear out for a few key things. We'll be talking about that interesting mix of digital processing, but with a very sort of analog vibe. And that tone print technology, which was, frankly, revolutionary, changed how people thought about customizing pedals. Plus, just its sheer ability to create these huge, shimmering chorus sounds, but all packed into this, tiny little box. So let's jump in. Okay, so the TC Electronic Corona Chorus, it landed in 2010, right? Part of their compact pedal series. And the main goal was pretty straightforward. Give guitarists great, versatile chorus sounds in a standard pedal size. Even the name Corona, that had a bit of a double meaning, didn't it?
Oh, it absolutely did. Yeah, quite clever, really. Corona worked on two levels. First, you've got the sound itself, that shimmering sort of halo effect that a good chorus gives your guitar tone, that kind of ethereal vibe.
Yeah.
But then it was also a nod to the small size, the compact format of the pedal, like a little crown for your pedal board. Small footprint.
Huh. Yeah, neat branding. Okay, so beyond the name, the thing that really got people talking straight away was tone print. This wasn't just a minor feature. It felt like a massive shift for TC Electronic.
Yeah.
Could you break down what tone print actually was and why it felt so significant back then?
Tone print was genuinely a game changer. It tapped into something musicians always want, getting those pro artist level sounds without needing, racks of gear or degree in sound engineering. The concept was simple but powerful. You could literally beam presets, tone prints designed by famous artists right into your pedal. You could do it via USB, sure, but the really cool part, especially for 2010, was doing it with a smartphone app. Just hold your phone up to the pickup. Before this, getting an artist's signature sound usually meant buying their specific, often expensive signature pedal or just endless knob tweaking. Tone print kind of democratized it. It gave everyone access to these really high-quality curated tones, and it wasn't just about convenience. It really pushed people to experiment, try sounds they'd maybe never dial in themselves. It connected the artist right to the player's pedal.
Right, so it wasn't just here are more knobs. It was here are sounds crafted by pros. That's a really smart approach. Okay, let's peek under the hood then. What was actually making the sound in the Corona Chorus? It wasn't just another digital box, right? There was some thought behind the circuit design.
That's right. Fundamentally, the Corona Chorus ran on a digital DSP engine, a digital signal processor. And that's a key point because, many of the really classic vintage chorus pedals people love use analog BBD chips, bucket brigade devices. BBDs have that sort of organic, chewy swirl. Very cool, but limited. TC Electronic going digital with the Corona opened up possibilities that just weren't feasible or would be way too complex in an analog circuit. It allowed for more precision, a wider range of sounds, and integrating things like, the tri-chorus and tone print.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
A deliberate choice for flexibility. And you mentioned classics. The Corona wasn't just pulling sounds out of thin air. It had a very specific inspiration, a famous ancestor. Which one was that, and why was that link important?
Yeah, it was directly inspired by a legend, the original TC Electronic SCF, that stands for Stereo Chorus Flanger. Now, the SCF, that was this amazing rack unit from the late 70s. Studios loved it. Incredibly lush, clean, spacious modulation, just gorgeous. So the significance is that the Corona was basically TC saying, let's take that iconic SCF sound, that expensive studio magic, and somehow squeeze it into a little stomp box.
Yeah.
It was all about making that highly revered tone much more accessible, pedal board friendly for everyday guitarists.
Right, bringing the big studio sound down to earth, or down to your feet, I guess. So let's talk controls. It had the usual suspects: speed, depth, FX level, and tone, 4 knobs. Was there anything special about how these controls worked on the Corona? Like the FX level and tone, how do they help shape the sound?
Well, yeah, speed and depth are pretty standard for chorus, obviously, but the FX level and tone on the Corona were really effective. The FX level wasn't just a simple volume control for the effect, it was a true wet-dry blend. So you could precisely dial in how much chorus you wanted, mixed with your clean guitar signal. That gives you huge control, from really subtle thickening to, full-on swirling C6 sounds. And the tone knob was great too. It let you adjust the brightness or darkness of the chorus effect itself, which is super useful for matching the pedal to different guitars or amps, making sure it didn't get too shrill or too muddy. It helped it sit nicely in the mix.
Okay, good controls. But beyond those, it had that little node switch, 3 options: chorus, then something called tri-chorus, and the tone print slot, that tri-chorus mode. That seems like a big deal for a compact pedal back then. What's so special about it?
Oh, the tri-chorus mode was a huge selling point. Standard chorus usually involves maybe 1 or 2 modulated signals, right? Tri-chorus uses 3 distinct chorus voices layered together. The result is this incredibly wide, thick, almost orchestral stereo soundscape. It just sounds massive. Usually effects that complex, that rich sounding, you'd only find them in like expensive rack gear or maybe really complex multi-effects units. So having that kind of 3-dimensional sound available in a regular sized pedal was pretty remarkable engineering, a big draw for anyone wanting those really lush ambient textures without a huge rack. And then, obviously, the tone print slot opened up endless other possibilities beyond those 2 main modes.
Yeah, that's impressive. And rounding out the features, it had stereo I/O, and you could switch between true bypass and buffer bypass.
Yep.
Why are those 2 things important for players?
Those features really show TC was thinking about different kinds of players and setups. Stereo inputs and outputs were vital. You really need stereo I/O to get the full benefit of those super wide chorus and especially the tri-chorus sounds. If you're running 2 amps or into a stereo interface, that's where it shines. Without stereo, you lose a lot of that width. And the switchable bypass? That was just smart. True bypass is popular because, well, when the pedal's off, your signal passes through completely untouched. Guitar tone purists love that. But if you have a big pedal board with lots of pedals and long cables, a good buffer, which buffered bypass provides, is actually essential. It prevents your signal from degrading, losing high end. Giving players the choice was just thoughtful. It acknowledged that different setups have different needs.
So really, they used digital tech smartly, not just to copy an old sound, but to add features like tri-chorus and tone print that went beyond what analog could easily do. Okay, let's track its journey. It launched in 2010. Did it change over time? Were there different versions?
Yeah, it evolved a bit. The main variation came in 2014 with the Corona Mini. That was a clever move. They basically crammed the same DSP engine, the same core sound, into one of those tiny micropedals. Obviously, with the smaller size, the controls were simplified, usually just 1 main knob plus tone print access. But the key thing was it still had full tone print support. So even if you had a super crowded pedal board, you could get the Corona sound and all those custom presets. And related to tone print, they eventually released a specific Corona SCF tone print. So you could load that in and get really close to the sound of the original vintage SCF unit. Kind of full circle.
Smart. Keep the core tech alive in different forms. Now, famous players often gravitate toward good gear. Did the Corona get picked up by any big names? Did that help its reputation?
Oh, absolutely. Having well-known artists use and, even better, collaborate on a pedal is huge validation. Guys like John Petrucci from Dream Theater and the amazing Paul Gilbert, both known for incredible technique and tone, they actually worked with TC Electronic. They created their own custom tone prints for the Corona. It's a massive endorsement, right? And it meant fans could download Petrucci's or Gilbert's actual chorus settings. Pretty cool. Beyond the big rock names, it became super popular with worship guitarists and players doing ambient stuff. That stereo shimmer, that width from the tri-chorus, it was perfect for those big atmospheric sounds. And naturally, it also appealed to players who just loved the original SCF, but wanted that sound without hunting down, a vintage rack unit. It was the modern, practical alternative.
Right, so we kind of hit multiple targets, different genres, different needs. But as often happens, the Corona's production run eventually ended. It got phased out in the 2020s, along with a bunch of other TC compact pedals. What was the story there?
Yeah, the discontinuation, it was probably disappointing for a lot of people. It really comes down to the business side of things, the realities of the gear industry. TC Electronic became part of Music Tribe, which is the parent company that also owns Behringer. When these big corporate acquisitions happen, there's often a lot of restructuring. Product lines get streamlined, strategies change, and sometimes even popular, well-loved pedals like the Corona get discontinued as part of that process, maybe to focus on newer designs or just simplify manufacturing. It's a tough part of the business cycle.
A familiar story in the industry, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
let's pull it all together then. What's the lasting legacy? What did the Corona Chorus really contribute?
Well, I think its main contribution, its legacy, is pretty clear. It really succeeded in bringing those high-fidelity, studio-grade chorus sounds down to a level that was accessible for almost any guitarist. Affordable, compact, easy to use, but with sounds that previously felt out of reach unless you had serious gear. It democratized that quality chorus sound.
And that tri-chorus mode seems key to that legacy too.
Absolutely. That trichorus mode was a standout. It delivered those incredibly wide, lush, almost three-dimensional tones that, not long before you really did need expensive rack gear for. Putting that kind of sonic power into a standard stomp box was a big deal. And of course, tone print. We have to mention tone print again. It wasn't just on the Corona, but the Corona was one of the flagships for it. It really set a new standard for user customization, moving beyond just twisting knobs, a more interactive way to shape your sound.
And what's really interesting, as you said earlier, is that even though it's discontinued, people still want it. It's sought after on the used market. What does that say about it? Does that make it a modern classic?
I think it absolutely does. It tells you a lot about what players value. Yet it's digital, and there's always that romance around pure analog. But the Corona achieved this modern classic status because it just worked. It delivered the goods, it gave players that beloved SCF-style sound, plus the amazing tri-chorus, plus the endless options of tone print, all in a reliable, pedalboard-friendly box. It proves that great sound, versatility, and smart features are what really matter to musicians, regardless of whether the circuit is analog or digital. It's about the musical result, the usability. It's a perfect example of how really well-designed digital gear can become iconic in its own right.
Yeah, well said. So there we have it, our deep dive into the TC Electronic Corona Chorus. From its launch with that game-changing tone print tech, its digital heart aiming for that classic SCF soul, through the mini version, artist collaborations, and its eventual discontinuation. But it clearly lives on as this highly respected, really versatile tool that guitarists are still hunting down. A true modern classic.
Definitely. And maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on. Seeing how the Corona blended that vintage inspiration, the SCF sound, with really modern digital flexibility like tone print. What other classic effects out there do you think are just waiting for that kind of treatment? A modern, compact, super customizable digital version. And maybe digging a bit deeper, what does the fact that people are actively seeking out discontinued digital pedals like the Corona tell us about how we value tech innovation versus, that pure analog tradition? Where's the balance?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Definitely something to think about next time you're tweaking your board or listening to effects. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you enjoyed it, and we really encourage you to keep exploring this amazing world of music tech. Until next time.